French, I remember our teacher would always make us read French books after we finished a test. Like, that was the only option. But what's funny is that I always felt like I learned more from the book than I did from the test. So if you're on the fence about this whole reading thing, my recommendations will not only give you a good book to get started, but also some great techniques so that you can read the way that suits you. Today, I'll give you the synopsis for 10 different books so that you can get an idea of which one you'd like the best, show you how you can use your book to read in different ways so you can find which one that suits you the best, and we'll also break down a passage together and use tools to see how reading can be less intimidating. Hygiène de l'assassin by Amélie Nothomb. So this is a strange little book. It's written almost entirely in dialogue, and it follows the story of the novelist Prétexte, who's dying. So he's actually a pretty unpleasant character, but also entertaining, and there's all these journalists that are trying to figure out his life story. But Tach makes it a game of avoiding questions about his personal life, and the book is basically this journey of following these journalists trying to dig up any interesting information about Tach. This is a pretty fast and absorbing read, and the mystery around Tach's life will really keep you glued to the page. Un soir au club by Christian Gailly. So I know people love their cliches when it comes to French, so I had to include at least one French piano drama. If you read more books in French or maybe watch some movies, you'll notice that a lot of plots will center around a character's ability or inability to play piano. I don't know why. So the protagonist of this book, Simon Nardi, is actually a former jazz pianist and also a former alcoholic. He gave up both of his loves, if you will, a while ago, but then in a single night, he goes back to drinking and playing piano. This book is really written in like a sharp, snappy prose, and it reads almost like reading jazz. Gailly often uses short sentence fragments and really snappy sentences, so it'll draw your attention to sentence structure and grammar, and it really just draws you in. Bonjour Tristesse by Françoise Sagan. It's difficult to find an equivalent for Sagan in English language literature. Some people kind of think of it like a trashy romance novel or the guilty pleasure form of a book. I think it's a lot better than that. The plot centers around a girl and her relationship with her father and how his love life gets a little messy when she tries to meddle. It has the quick gratification of a romance novel, but it reads more like a soap opera. This book has a lot of charisma, a lot of personality, so it really draws you in. Okay, I can sense some of you are a little skeptical of this reading thing because it's what teachers always tell you to do when movies and shows just seem so much cooler. But I have some reading methods for you because there's actually more than one way to read and they all serve different purposes, so you can find a method that really suits you. So reading out loud is something no one talks about. It's so helpful for improving your speaking and your fluidity, and you don't have to come up with anything to say. You just read what's on the paper. If you ever feel like you have to really cough out French words or your mouth is like getting stuck while speaking French, this is a really good exercise to help you improve that. Audiobooks are a great option if you're really looking to apply your French in a more conversational context. It'll also really help you improve pronunciation because the narrator's voice will be in your head for hours, and hopefully their voice inflection and tone will help you comprehend more than just reading on a paper. If you're just starting out or more at an intermediate level, I would also encourage you to get the physical copy of a book while you listen to the audiobook so you can make connections between what you're hearing and what you're seeing. If you want to just try this out, there's a lot of free audiobooks on YouTube that you can check out. Also, if you're really intimidated by a large amount of French text, start out with a graphic novel. I know a lot of beginners do this and the visuals will really help you understand more French. And of course, Tintin is a crowd favorite, so there's lots to choose from. So, fun fact, I actually used to write a lot of poetry in high school, and I've always really loved the medium. So if you're a romantic like me, you might like this bonus recommendation of Paroles by Jacques Prévert. He uses pretty simple language and is playful but also serious. And since the language in poetry is nuanced, it'll actually help build your translation skills. You don't have to be interested in translation in the future, but it does give you a very sophisticated command over the French language. Of course, standard reading is really good for comprehension, and it's probably best for you if you're looking to apply your French in a formal context or a professional context. Okay, back to the recommendations. Piètre le laiton by Georges Simenon. So this book introduces Commissaire Maigret, who actually appears in a lot more books and stories, like more than 100. So if you enjoy following Maigret through his methodical investigation processes, you'll basically have a great reading list for practicing French. The prose in this novel is still a little rough compared to his future works, but you'll get used to Commissaire Maigret as well as Simenon's writing style. Coule la Seine by Fred Vargas. So this is a collection of 3 detective novels, and the author introduces Commissaire Adamsberg, who appears in more future novels. Vargas is actually a historian, and she incorporates this knowledge into her books, making her characters really rich and eccentric, and the plots will also play out in a very satisfying way. L'Amant by Marguerite Duras. This book is a basic part of any education in French literature, and it's set in French colonial Vietnam. It follows the story of a young girl from a French family who becomes romantically involved with an older Chinese man. The plot is narrated from a detached point of view of a woman who's reflecting on her past, and it's written kind of similar to Gailly's Soir au Club because there's a lot of repetition, which will really help you understand the plot. Let's take a quick pause and see how we can use tools while reading to really enhance your understanding. Especially if you're at more of an intermediate level, you might need a little bit of guidance while starting out, which is totally fine. Something really simple you can do is have a notebook with you while you read and take down vocab words for each chapter. I would recommend looking them up on a platform like Word Reference. I would also recommend that you look up a summary before you start reading so that you have some reference for the plot before you begin. My preferred tool is actually FluentU, and I'll show you how I would break down a passage using the platform. So let's take this passage for example. Perhaps you're reading and you don't know the word ride. So we can look it up on FluentU. And we can see that it means wrinkles or creases. You can also see how it's pronounced.
Ride, ride.
And there's some sample sentences for it as well. Now, let's be real, no one besides me really writes things in notebooks, so you can use the same platform and add it to a flashcard set. We'll just call it French books for now. And then you have words to refer back to all in the same platform. So let's do another example. So you keep reading and you see the word fin. And you might be thinking, okay, fin usually means the end, so maybe you don't know it in this context. Well, we'll look up fin. And we can see that, yeah, one of the definitions is end, but this might be the one we're looking for. Fine, subtle, or delicate. We also have some video examples.
Pour être qualifié de supérieur, de fin, de noir, que sais-je encore, eh bien le
Fin, meilleur c'est.
And this is really helpful since a lot of books don't have pictures, so having this image over here and also the video examples will really help commit the words to your memory in case you're more of a visual learner. There's a link to a free trial in the description, so I highly recommend you check it out. Adolphe by Benjamin Constant. This book is another classic and very much a moral and psychological thriller. It follows the story of a man who falls in love with an older woman, and he's very self-analytical, so this book really follows his inner misgivings and woes. The writing is mostly limited to Adolphe's state of mind and his interactions with other characters, so the vocab is pretty easy to understand and easy to follow despite that it was first written in 1816. Moi qui n'ai pas connu les hommes by Jacqueline Hartmann. I'm realizing a lot of these are kind of thriller books, and this is kind of a quasi-sci-fi horror, but also a unique and beautiful book. This book is narrated by a female character who grows up in an imprisoned, secret underground location raised by a group of women. So the reader is introduced to a world that's kind of like this, but not really. So then you have the question of who are the women's captors? Why are they trapped there? And it's a pretty mysterious book. Like I said, it's pretty creepy, it's imaginative, and it's also full of examples of passé simple. So it's great if you really like French fiction, more on the thriller side. Les yeux jaunes des crocodiles by Catherine Pancol. This is by far the longest and most difficult read on this list, but it is also going to help you improve your French the most. So if it's a little intimidating for you right now, maybe choose something else on the list and then come back to this one. Pancol writes with a light, sympathetic touch, and it follows the story of a family that has a lot of different interests and ambitions, but is still striving to love and support one another. This book is kind of like an addictive TV series in the sense that you really get attached to the characters and want to know what happens to them next, which is a great way to keep you hooked on through even the more difficult parts of the book. If you like this video, you should definitely check out our previous video on the best podcasts for French learners. We have a really diverse selection, so there's really something for everyone. And we've also included a free PDF below of all these recommendations, so you can refer to it the next time you're looking for what to read.